Welcome back to Interviews from the Wasteland, everybody. Today we're doing a podcast with one of the contributors to the Amelia Counterrevolution. That would be Tales from the Lemurverse Anthology 2. This is a publisher and contributor by the name of Paige Zeplendam. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And
Good enough.
and it's great to have you here. So thank you for coming on board, and let's discuss sort of the book and some of your other experiences in the smaller publishing industry and some other stuff. So let's get started with specifically the contribution that you made to Tales from the Lemurverse Anthology 2 Counter-Revolution. So,
Yeah, I actually had I had two different contributions. One, I kind of wrote the second one, and then I wrote the first one. And I
mhm.
believe he tried to kind of put it in kind of like a chronological order kind of a thing. The second one,
And
so you may not know.
that would be the editor, Clayton Barnett, correct?
Yes,
All
he
right.
being, yes, hey, Clayton.
All right,
Um,
go ahead.
yeah, so I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer, and the current series that I'm working on deals with cyborgs and AI augmentation. Um, so I'm kind of in that headspace kind of a thing. So when we were talking about the idea of like writing about Amelia, there wasn't a lot of there's fairly loose guidelines on the approach. They don't like to nail, especially it's hard to do an anthology because it's like herding cats.
Yeah.
So trying to nail everybody down to a single focus is kind of difficult. Um, but so I because I was in the headspace and I'm an American, and I always see this in terms of, the UK tends to be probably about, or we tend to be about 10 years or so, 10 to 15 years behind wherever the UK is at. And seeing where the UK is at, I'm like, let's not. Let's just not. But but how would we end up with an Amelia like scenario in the US, right? How could this happen? So that's where my brain is going with all of this, the Amelia talk, and doing a story about it. So I
I'd
ended up
imagine it would be
writing.
quite
What's that?
difficult in the US. I'd imagine it would be quite difficult in the US due to the fact that we're a bunch of different cultures sort of mushed together. But go ahead. Sorry. Continue with what you were saying.
Right. And then also the clear government propaganda. Like it's so dystopian. And I feel like because as millennial my everybody my age, we're millennials, and I don't really know much about Gen X, but I know millennials at least, we were all junior and senior year completely inundated with dystopian novels, 1984 and Fahrenheit 451 and Brave New World. We had to read all of them.
Yeah, I
Um
actually remember. I'm in a roughly a similar age bracket, and I remember getting inundated with dystopian novels. Not Camp of the Saints, though. They never made me read Camp of the Saints.
I don't think I ever even heard that one.
Oh, you haven't heard of Camp of the Saints? Oh, this is
No.
a okay. Here we go. I'm gonna start ranting a little bit, and then we'll get back to your story. But Camp of the Saints is a book that was published in 1973 in France, and it is one of the dystopian novels that goes next to Fahrenheit 451, Brave New World, 1984. It's sort of like the third in the set after Brave New World, 1984. But Camp of the Saints was the English rights were purchased, and they refused to republish it since roughly the 1990s, I think. Someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. And so it's been basically impossible to get. You had to get an original paperback copy from the one of the first English printings back in the 90s, and they refused to publish again because they thought that the book was too dangerous.
But
And recently, last November, somebody bought the rights to it and has been republishing it.
hmm. So they had to see, because I was going to say, like, once it hit, if it's over, what is it, 70 years of age, it's public domain. Anybody can get a copy of it and publish it.
Yes, but it's not over 70 years. So what they've
Not
done, I
yet.
think, is they did a new English translation, and so they have the rights to their own English translation now.
Who wrote it?
Um, oh, I should know that off the top of my head. I'm reading it. I'm only through the introduction. It's
Okay.
quite the introduction to a book. But his name was Jean Raspel, and you can, for the first time ever, you can get it for $25 on Amazon or on
Ooh,
Audible. High
I'm
recommendation.
going to pick it up for sure.
Um, but the reason why it was banned is because it depicts a third world migrant invasion of Europe and the destruction of European civilization at the hands of the third world, not invading in the classic sense with firearms, but invading through the form of mass migration.
Oh, who'd have thunk?
Yeah, so that's the one that's actually read banned books, except for the one that actually matters.
That's right. That's right. Um, so,
Anyway, get back to your
uh,
story. Cyborgs. You were talking about
yeah,
cyborgs and the fiction you were working on.
right, right. So looking at our country as opposed to, I feel like millennials who are, we're the adults right now. And because we had such a large exposure to dystopian fiction, and then we see what's going on in the UK, I feel like it'd be significantly more difficult to do that in the United States, what the UK did with their propaganda game thing. Um,
Yes.
because we would just see it as like, well, that's a dystopian nightmare. No, we're not doing it. Um, so I was thinking to myself, like, but how would this happen? Because it's not like it couldn't happen in the US. It's just a matter of it would come about in a different way, kind of a thing. So
Mhm.
my thought went to the whole that the if we're thinking about like how the military is going to use something, they're always going to use technology in a way that's going to advantage or what they perceive as an advantage against you know whatever their narrative is. So let's say if leftists got in power again, then they're going to do what they can to or I think in my case it was like the right was in power and then they were trying to create this android that is going to be an insertion unit into these like Antifa or anarchist cells kind of a thing. And obviously this is like it's in the near future because clearly we don't have androids that are that they don't have the verisimilitude of humanity that well. And this would be an insertion droid that can basically completely mimic a human in all ways. We're not there yet. So, but the idea was that they're going to have this android that does this and then feeds all this information back on these terrorist groups, domestic terrorist groups, back to the government. And they're not going to know that this is an insertion droid.
Mhm.
So, and then, but you get these, scientists. You have on the one hand, you have people working for the government, and then you have these same scientists that are typically raised, their bread and butter, raised in colleges and whatnot. They're raised to be leftists. So when they're using their skills to promote an agenda for the right that works against or things that they believe in, then there tends to be a conflict there. And I think that happens probably in real life more often than people realize. And it probably opens us up to vulnerability quite a bit. Um, but so I wanted to have it as these two very ambitious scientists decide that they're going to DARPA or something like that. They decide that they're going to completely hijack the entire propaganda or not they were going to hijack this android system and they were going to create this android that's a complete quote far right, according to them it's a far right nut job, right? Because they leftists view the everybody on the right with complete and utter horror, even though
I
most
would I
people on
would
the
argue
right.
that I would argue that the word isn't horror. I would say contempt is a better word.
Yes, but it's to the point that they can't even identify with, like, they're so used to being in their own echo chamber that they can't
Oh,
even identify with our concerns at all.
so I'm
So,
gonna I'm gonna go off on
yeah.
a little bit of a philosophical tangent because I'm curious about your opinion of it.
Hmm.
This is my perspective, and I would like to hear your opinion of it. This is published in one of my earlier articles from about a year ago, because I sort of did an analysis of progressive thinking, and I'm curious what you think about it. Um, it's a somewhat aggressive analysis. So my proposal is that progressivism as an ideological foundation only claims to care about human rights, egalitarianism, and sustainability. But in actuality, progressivism, at its philosophical core, is predominantly concerned with just hurting, killing, or and otherwise reducing quality of life for as many people as possible. Like the second order effects of their policies aren't incidental; they're intentional. And the ideology at its core is just about uh, reducing human quality of life and making it more difficult for normal people to live their lives and have kids and have families. And progressives couch all of this in terms that are politically palatable. Oh, we're just about helping immigrants when they try to import thousands of drug cartel members and rapists and murderers. Or, it's about the prison rights system while they're letting people off the hook for violent assaults and criminal behavior. I think that if you look at leftism through the context of how best can we hurt as many people as possible while maintaining plausible deniability, all of their actions start making a whole lot more sense than if you look at it through the lens of what they claim is their core values, because they claim their core values are like human rights and free healthcare and this, that, and the other. But in practice, it's how can we hurt as many people as possible? And leftists fall into the category of those who understand that this is the goal and support it. And then they also fall into the category of people who more or less understand that's the goal, but are very good at lying to themselves about it. In my opinion, it's about a 50-50 split between the ones lying to themselves and the ones lying to you when you ask them. But that might be giving them too much credit uh, for self-assessment. Um, but in my opinion, you have to treat with leftism not as if they're misguided people, but as if they're people, as if they're individuals that are fully aware of the horrific side effects of their actions and are doing it intentionally because that is their goal.
Uh, well, I tend to think that that is I feel like that gives them too much credit in the sense that I think most people are, and I don't mean this as a pejorative, and I don't mean this as an insult to leftists because they're leftists. I just mean
I
most
mean, you're
people in
welcome to
general.
insult them. I just did. I just I just went really far in doing so. But go ahead.
Well, I do try to be fair, you know. I don't try to be insulting to anyone, especially if not for something over their intelligence, which they typically have no control over. But I think most people don't have the intelligence to it's not even necessarily the intelligence, what's the word it's like this a commitment to truth, I guess you would say. It's they're easily swayed. It's they're attached to the things of this world, so they have no longevity. They have no sense of the sublime, and
Yes.
because of that, everything's all kind of just
I,
degraded.
I would argue, though, that the purpose of leftism is to create that environment. So the ideology acts as a mutual construct between multiple people, and the thought leaders of the ideology are well aware of what they're doing. And when
Oh,
somebody sort of
sure.
trades their capacity for critical thinking in exchange for this comfortable, everything is everyone else's fault, and I'm going to make everyone pay
But
for it sort of ideological attitude, most people I think are aware, not even most, but a significant percentage are aware that they're making that choice. And then after they've made that choice and they've absorbed the ideological totalitarian, once they've made that choice and absorbed the ideological totalitarianism of the progressive left, you can no longer treat with them as if they are independent thinking individuals. That's why when you argue with a leftist, it feels like you're arguing with a brick wall. It's because there's nobody in there anymore to have an argument with.
Well, so there's a couple of things. I think number one, I think that ship has sailed. I don't think that you're right. It is a self-perpetuating machine, and they have done very well. I mean, by all intents and purposes, I mean, I think they've all but won. I mean, because I'm looking at this from the perspective of being a traditional Catholic. I don't see right in the end, Satan's going after the things of God. So I don't see that there's any particular you know there's no vast conspiracy to do this. It's not like at this point it's been engendered into our, I mean, into our the generations, right? The succeeding generations from the boomers, right? And I get a lot of hear a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
these zoomers that want to blame the boomer generation. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I know, like, for example, my dad, he was able to serve one Latin mass before it was switched over to the Novus Ordo, and they brought in Vatican II and all this kind of a
Hmm.
business. So it makes a huge difference when you have a sudden shift. He was only like maybe 10 or 12 at the time. So you have a sudden shift. They were all kids. You can't really expect them. They had a sudden shift towards modernism and progressivism, and I mean, if you want to blame someone, I'd say you'd have to blame the greatest generation. But can they even be blamed? Because think about what they lived through, right? They lived through the Great Depression when they were children. Some of them lived through World War
Mm.
One when they were
I feel
kids.
like
You know,
feel relatively comfortable narrowing the blame if you're going to blame a generation to the boomers and Gen X respectively, because Generation X basically checked out. Um, they functionally checked out of the society and they let boomers run it without any real pushback. And the boomers themselves have managed to um, soar our Hindenburg of a civilization into the ground, partially
but
with
I think
50% of the federal budget being entirely consumed by the boomers in terms of Social Security and Medicaid.
this is where you and I differ, though, because, like I said, I think you give them too much credit for having the perspicacity and the wherewithal to know what they should be doing, and to purposely, to purposely deny it. Now, and I do understand, like, well, when you're a child, you do things as a child, and when you're a man, you do things as a man, and it's like these are people on brace never growing the heck up. I get that. But at the same time, like the ignorance and the it's so vast, right? And so while let's say the millennials were disadvantaged, so I would say even Gen X was disadvantaged by what the boomers were disadvantaged by the fact that when they went to college as young people, if you think about how stupid you are as a young person at 20 years old, 21 years old, how easily influenced you are and how easily led you are.
Oh yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's like you're going to these colleges, and we know the Frankfurt School got into these colleges in the 1950s, so they were already influencing come the late 50s into
Mhm.
the 60s when all the boomers started going to
I
school,
mean,
and that's how the
I'm
entire free love thing happened.
definitely of the opinion that McCarthy did nothing wrong, based on visible results. um, because there, I agree, there was a huge impetus to put these ideas into the university system. But with that said, I think Gen X elected not to push back against it. Millennials have been basically screwed from the moment we tried to enter the workforce. And then Zoomers live in this almost decaying post-Soviet state, where, I mean, in some states, they're trying to make it illegal to collect your own water or consume your own food.
Mhm.
It's
True.
just a mess.
I tend to not I tend to not hold any particular generation accountable. I just see it as a steady erosion of morals and values. It's like buckling from the inside up or
I
inside
mean,
down, going
well,
up. So it's bound to happen.
well, it does happen, but it tends to happen because mistakes were made in specific places by large groups of people. And while I give you that, the vicious aggression against the boomers is in some cases not warranted. In other cases, it kind of is. Uh, I've known boomers who would, and this is my favorite real story, and people are like, this can't be real. No, 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 this happened. Um, Boomers who would they like to they would buy like the beef from Walmart or from Albertsons or whichever their grocery store was. Um, they would buy beef to feed their dogs because they wanted their dogs to eat well. At the same time, their own kids are eating like ramen noodles because they can barely afford rent. And that's like just the boomer psyche of, well, this is my dog and I own it, therefore it needs to be the best dog that I can have. But since I don't own my children anymore and I can't control them, they can get bent. They don't deserve anything. Um, and that sort of attitude of I hope to spend my last dollar on the day that I die, because I see no reason that the world should continue existing without me or to perpetuate my own people or my own culture past my lifetime. And that attitude is heavily ingrained in the boomers and has in many ways shuffled down
I
through the
hate to break it
generations.
to you. I hate to break it to you, but that's not even a boomer thing per se. My
That isn't.
I No, no. So I grew up in and out of nursing homes because my mother
Mm,
was heavily involved in nursing home administration.
mm,
And so a lot of exposure because she was Catholic. She had a lot of they would always call her in on the deathbeds, and
mm,
she was a case manager. And
mm,
uh, the number of horror stories with these families, and these aren't boomers; these would be the greatest generation dying off in the nursing homes when I was a kid, right?
mm,
Um, And exactly the same sort of, like, the priorities are completely not where they're supposed to be, where they're not worried about their grandchildren, whether their grandchildren are going to have enough to make sure that the will is split correctly, this kind of a thing. They're worried that they're literally dying, and they're worried about if they can get to the Cadillac dealership in time to buy the Cadillac that they want. Like, like it's not even a joke, and it was routine. Or you have their children, the boomer generation, who they have raised with this. And that's why I'm saying, if you want to blame someone, blame the boomer generation, because not the boomer, the greatest generation, because the greatest generation was raised with the morals and values, whether the boomers weren't. They dropped the ball on the boomer generation, because I mean, I kind of get it. Like, they were tired from the war. They were just tired. They just kind of gave up and just put your kids in Catholic school. Well, Catholic schools got taken over by modernists. Put your kids in Catholic school. You don't got to worry about it. It's none of your business. Put them in school. It's done. Was done. I'm going to live my good life. And they had the fine life they had in the 50s. And I'm not saying that's the case in all cases. It wasn't. But regardless, though, they kind of gave this, and then you get so many boomers that they just don't care about their parents, and they'll let them rot in a nursing home. And then instead, they're literally fighting over their dying grandmother's body, their the mother's body. Mom's not dead yet. They're fighting over the deathbed, literally
And this
arguing with
this
each
just
other.
sounds like another indictment of the boomers, just from the other side. Have you ever read Evola? Any of Evola's work?
No.
Okay. Evola, I found Ride the Tiger to be a particularly interesting philosophical book because Evola, he wrote his works in the 1940s and 1950s, if I remember, most of them anyway. Um, I don't know he first started and finished writing, but it was somewhere in that time bracket. All right, I'm going to look it up. I don't want to be talking out my butt. Um, so he was predominantly a writer in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, I think. Um, and he was often complaining about, quote unquote, this young new beatnik generation in the book Ride the Tiger. And what I find fascinating about his complaints about, quote, the young new beatnik generation from the 60s, 70s, is that it's the same complaint that millennials and Generation Z are leveling against the same group of people, just from the other side. So the Evola wrote from the perspective of somebody who was born in the 1800s, barely, um, complaining about boomers from the top, and millennials and Zoomers are elucidating very, very similar complaints, but from the bottom, which I get a
Well, I
kick
would
out of.
say Zoomers and millennials have the advantage of hindsight. We've seen
Yes.
the screw up. We see where it went wrong. But I will say this, that I think, like, it's a matter of blood from a stone, right? The reason why these boomer children were like that was because of the permissiveness of their parents to allow it in the first place. You can't expect to have virtue and good people from parents that just stopped giving a damn about
Okay, so
anything.
here's my proposal actually. Uh, first, my proposal is that liberalism as a materialist religion, the three materialist religions, liberalism, communism, and fascism, but we're going to narrow it to liberalism. Liberalism as a materialist religion hit its peak when the boomers were young. Um, Sort of peak liberalism was a sexual revolution in the 70s, in my opinion. That's
Mhm.
when you got a whole bunch of these policies pushed that we're still dealing with today. Um, but liberalism can only exist when the universal rights, when universal human rights have an ideological structure under them. And so historically, liberalism has always existed in the context of Christianity because that's where it was developed. So everybody's made in the image of God, therefore we are all afforded, equal grace in the name of God, equal, what's the word? Not rights, uh,
Opportunity,
not quite opportunity, um, um, deference. It's not pride either. What's the word?
dignity.
Dignity. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
So liberalism, it was on the tip of my tongue. I do this all the time.
Me too.
Liberalism takes the idea that we're all afforded equal dignity in the eyes of God because we're made in the image of God, and then takes God away from it. So it takes away the foundation and says, well, we're all just equal because of reasons. There's a book by uh, I think it's Yuval Harari called Homo Deus that kind of goes into this and goes into liberal philosophy and theology. Um, but because liberalism became so predominant in the period of the boomers, one of the things that liberalism does in trying to establish total perfect egalitarianism is it attacks social taboos and it attacks by proxy social standards and foundations. So liberalism attacked its own foundation. It attacked Christianity. And through the 90s, you saw a very, very strong anti-Christian, anti-God sort of sentiment that would float up in numerous books. That's where you had your sort of Dawkins atheists that would very successfully, mind you, argue against Christianity and organized religion as a foundation for human social systems. However, once the foundation is gone, liberalism falls out from under itself. It can no longer support the sort of necessary ideological worldview required for it to be a functional materialist religion. And so, in attacking its own foundation, it discarded the only hand that was pulling it back from the cliff and has promptly plunged to its own version of utopia. And so, modern liberalism, in my opinion, then exists as a modern progressivism exists as a proxy for old liberalism in having entered its final form. And modern progressivism is, in my opinion, about as close as you can get to like Warhammer 40K demon possession, as we actually, it's as close as you can get to that because those who have been infested by the ideology of progressivism just completely lose touch with reality, and that's because progressivism wants people to believe wholeheartedly that their own personal version of reality is the valid version of reality. That's why you have people talking about quote unquote my truth.
Right. Well, they're definitively, I mean, it's definitively a cult. They're very dangerous people. They don't realize how dangerous they are, but get a few of them together into a mob and they can become lethal, really. But I do think of it as far as like culpability goes. Uh, um, there's the way it is, and then there's the way it should be, right? So dealing with the way
Mhm.
it is, um, it's like having a drunk person. You know what I mean? Like so in the Catholic paradigm, so you're guilty, it's a mortal sin if you get drunk. Any sins that you commit while you are drunk would not be sins because you've lost the use of your reason. Now, would you still require some sort of, out of justice, you'd still be obliged to have to pay or restitution for any harm that was done. So, God willing, nobody killed somebody while they were drunk, right?
Mhm.
But the mortal sin involved was the getting drunk in the first place. So when you're talking about people transitioning into this cult, well, first of all, like when are we talking about here? Because these young people that are, I mean, their conscience is so eroded from so young. If I think about by the time I was in high school, you had so many people that were just they we all knew there was something wrong. We all
Yeah.
knew that, but we had no idea what, right? We all had this appeal, like it was like you remember all of the rockers from the 90s, the grunge people
Yeah.
that were like, there's something really wrong with the world, and we're just singing about it, and we don't know. We don't have answers. We got a lot of gripes and complaints, basically. And everybody's going, all the people in my generation were going like, yeah, yeah. But nobody had answers, right? Even though this is all asked and answered, and basically, like with the church basically, or the Nova Sordo, anyways, it hid the answers. The answers have already, they're all there, but it was all hidden from us, our entire generation. And like as adults, a lot of us stumbled upon it, and we end up converting, and we're like, why didn't this is mind blowing? These are the answers. We didn't know that this was here. And so we're looking back in hindsight, and we're pointing at the boomers and saying, you're the ones that ushered, you're the problem. But really they weren't, because the ones that were in power, and it's funny because even like the popes of the 19th century, they all condemned this throughout the 1800s. They said, this is coming, you need to prepare, this is coming, this is all going to get really, really bad. And everybody basically just ignored them. The entire, like the rank and file Catholic, they ignored it and they allowed it to happen. So it wasn't the boomers that allowed it to happen. The boomers were the victims of it just as much as anybody else. And they're just, everybody's still trying to figure it out. And so you have the boomers on the one side that are like, they all lost the faith, by the way, at like 11 and 12 years old. If you ever end up going on any kind of social media and you start talking about religion, the
Oh
ones
yeah,
who
they
are
come
the
out of the
most
woodwork.
vicious, yes, and they start saying things like, You ask him about, well, when did you stop believing? It's always at about 11 and 12. And what happened at 11 and 12 is Vatican II. And they brought into its religion stopped mattering because they brought in the whole freedom of religion. You can be any religion you want. It doesn't really matter. So at
Yeah, no,
that
that's
point,
BS.
yeah, they lost their like moral anchor. And so because people aren't stupid and children aren't stupid, if you're 11 or 12 years old, that's a really formative time where, you're trying to figure out your place in the world, you're trying to figure out what is true and what is not. So if you have the big thing telling you, well, you can be anything you want now, well, then you're like, then it's all crap, none of it matters, and they just stop believing. So you take that and then they go into colleges where they're being heavily influenced by these communists and all the free love and all this kind of business, and it's just a complete debacle. So that's where, it's like we have the benefit of hindsight now because we're looking back on what happened and we're trying to fix everything. And thank like the internet has been incredible as far as helping
Oh yeah,
people to
the
find the
ability to
truth.
compare notes is crazy. So I was actually I am one of the old guard of the quote unquote new right. I go back to sort of the days of Occupy Wall Street when that happened, if you remember that.
I do.
When people tried to make a change and it turned into this gigantic mess. So that was back when the sort of libertarian right and the liberal left were aligned in the same direction. And Occupy Wall Street is what broke that alliance and forced what later became the new right 20 years later to sort of go home and reevaluate all of their political positions because clearly progressivism does not work. It
Right.
was a wild couple of years when all of that philosophical discussion was happening on the internet, and then 2014 happened and kind of solidified what the new right was going to become 2 or 3 years later, 3 or 4 years later. So, yeah,
Yeah.
when did you start playing with these ideas?
Uh, Probably in high school, I think. I was always the one that picked up the paper and read the opinion editors. Thomas Sowell, I think, had
Nice.
what do you call it? Not an article. He had I should know this because I'm in journalism and the word is not coming to me. A piece, where it came out regularly.
Uh-huh.
What is the word? When an author has a contribution to an art to a newspaper every Sunday or whatever it is,
Um,
Um,
man, I haven't read a
right?
newspaper in a long time.
Yeah.
An opinion
Uh,
piece?
no. Oh, it was just I just had it and then it disappeared again.
Okay,
Whatever. Somebody
skip
can
it. Go
drop it in the
ahead.
comments.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but it was. I would always read Thomas Sowell. My father was always very influential in my life, and he was very philosophical. And I converted between my junior and my senior year, or reverted, I should say. I grew up in the Novus Ordo and we became traditional Catholic between my junior and senior year, and so that was kind of a watershed moment for me, I guess you would say, because uh, I gave myself I had all these extra study halls, because I'm an overachiever type. So I had tons of extra study halls in my junior and senior year, and I just packed them full with reading, like everything I could read that
Mhm.
was pertinent to giving myself an education on how to be a Catholic. Because I just didn't know that all of that was out there until I had exposure to it. Uh, so that was really, but I've always cared about all these sorts of things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I'm just curious about this because I know that the new right, what later became the new right, really started experimenting with dangerous ideas around 2010 or 2011 after the failure of Occupy Wall Street. I've actually got a article that I wrote on sort of the summary of the culture war up to around, um, let's see, it would be up to around uh, last year with the first real big sort of media sensation of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Um, I'll include the article below. Um,
When you say dangerous ideas, can you expand on that? What do you mean by that?
Dangerous ideas. So the new right rejects ideas that John Locke liberalism take for granted. Egalitarianism, for one. The new right very much rejects the idea of material egalitarianism. First of all, because it's provably objectively false, and second of all, because it's one of the sacred cows of liberalism. Because different groups of people are different, and they are not interchangeable cogs in your machine of global production. and pretending that they are as stupid
So
as an
wait, so I
example.
was confused. So the dangerous idea is rejecting material egalitarianism,
Yes,
or
that was very dangerous. If you remember back in the late 2010s
oh,
or
no, I don't think I
early
would have. That
2011,
was
2012.
no, I don't think I would have had enough exposure back then. I was too. I
Okay,
don't know. Did I
well,
even have a smartphone then?
yeah, that's about the time when everyone was getting smartphones. Um, but those ideas were quite dangerous. They could be career ending to say that different, I mean, it still can be if you work in the right careers, but to say that different groups of people are fundamentally different, that
Oh,
is
you mean
very dangerous to
I'm
say.
sorry. I thought you meant so you mean dangerous for a person on the right to hold these ideas, not
Yeah.
that it was dangerous to society for someone on the right to hold these ideas.
Well, it's also dangerous to society if society is predicated on John Locke liberalism.
Right. No, no, that's what I mean.
So,
So it wasn't dangerous to society for people on the right to reject material egalitarianism.
yeah.
Right. Okay. I was confused. I got
Yeah,
it.
sorry about that. But they are dangerous ideas, and you see that in books like Amelia Counterrevolution here, where you are saying the English people are unique people, and the government gets real mad at you for saying that to the point where they've got an entire propaganda piece trying to dissuade young men from doing the thing that gets them the purple-haired goth baddie, the racist purple-haired goth baddie. I don't know what their thinking behind that was, to be honest. I feel like they are completely disconnected from the actual human population of the British Isles, but maybe that's just me.
Well, I that's what I thought was so funny about it when I was first reading about this, how this whole thing came to be, and I'm like, all right, like who in their right mind would look at, people on the right and then they'd be like, yes, let's make her a purple-haired goth girl. You know what I mean? Like of all the
Yeah.
like domesticated housewives, literally none of them are purple-haired goth girls. So why why are they presenting this as like this is a cultural norm for the far right? Like that was like so bizarre to me. And this is how I ended up doing my story the way it was because leftists project. They can't get out of their echo chamber. They project onto everybody else the way they're like, what would be like the coolest, most attractive thing, and they just assume that same thing would be attractive to everybody. Right. And so it's I just find it hilarious.
My proposal is that progressives completely lack a theory of mind for other individuals because progressives don't have a theory of mind for themselves. The progressive ideology is sort of like a gestalt entity, an egregore that possesses individuals and puppets them around to go do stupid things on its behalf, which is why leftists also don't really have a whole lot of self-interest either. They'll just do stuff that they think is morally righteous, even to their own radical and violent detriment at times, because it's on behalf of the egregore that they created, not themselves. Are you familiar with the word egregore?
No.
Okay. I'll pull up a proper definition. But egregore is a word that means a non-physical thought forms, sort of an autonomous psychic entity created by a large group of people and their collective beliefs, emotions, and attention focused on their own group.
So kind of like the aggregate, but embodied.
Not
It can
embodied because it doesn't
sing its
have a
own
body, but
thing.
yeah,
Well, like
a psychic
spiritually.
gestalt. Yeah, a
Right.
metaphysical psychic gestalt
I
that
like it.
appears um, as not really a hive mind, but as a collective creation of a metaphysical spiritual form that can then apply interest and um, apply effect to the real world through the people that believe in it.
Well, mob rule, you saw it with the French Revolution.
Correct.
It's yeah, you definitely saw it with the French Revolution, and I've seen it. Um, it's when they have this completely irrational, and they
Mm.
can be swayed by this one small thing, one way or another, to lethal detriment to other people who are. And you
For
saw that too with
themselves.
the remember with the what's his name? He shot. He was involved in those riots, and he got shot at, but he was able to. I can't remember his name now. And then he got
Which
off eventually. The kid.
Oh, Kyle.
Yes, Kyle.
Little
You saw that. Like
tenacious kid.
it was
Yeah.
fascinating from a sociological perspective to watch these groups, the dynamics, the group dynamics with this mob
Hmm.
mentality and the way it was like a flock of birds, you
Hmm.
know, the way they
No,
would move and everything.
they
So
were
it's
going
kind
to
of the
kill
same
him
sort of
too.
thing.
They were
Oh,
absolutely going to kill him.
absolutely. Yeah, they were, for sure. I saw it was really fascinating, totally tangential, but I saw it was like one of these special forces, or he like owns a company where they do training for security and whatnot.
Mm.
And he was in alt over, like, just amazed, profoundly amazed at the amount of like mental control that
Oh
Kyle
yeah, yeah.
had throughout this entire, so he did like a second by second review of that
It
entire
was really
scenario.
impressive.
And just,
As
he's like, the fact that he was able to keep his head the way he did was crazy, crazy.
Yeah, no, it was actually very impressive. As somebody who is a regular shooter myself, Freedom Land, I shoot guns, of course I do. Um, but as somebody who's a regular shooter, that was a very impressive couple of seconds there that Kyle pulled off, especially for a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Like a trained spec ops guy could not have done better. He,
Mhm.
perfect timing, perfect shots. It really was sort of a, for lack of better phrasing, a hand of God situation uh,
Yeah, I
for
like
him to have
he
managed to
never lost
survive that
control.
incident. Yeah.
Never lost
I th-
control. He never, like, even when he stumbled down, like he never, it's not like his gun was like waving all over the place, you know? It
Mhm.
was I don't know anything about, like, I want to know about shooting guns, but I don't know anything about shooting guns. But when it was explained to me just how good of a job he did, I mean, I was like, I don't, like, I already knew that he was innocent based off of
Mhm.
what was going on. You'd have to be completely blind to believe that he wasn't innocent in this
If
situation.
there wasn't drone footage though, they would have executed him.
Yeah,
They totally
for
would have
sure.
executed him because progressivism doesn't care about what's true. It cares about what can gain it more power so that it can hurt more people.
Yes.
I mean,
Uh,
that's
uh,
a good description of what happened in the French Revolution, to be honest, to go back to your earlier statement, is it was the
Yep.
same egregore that caused the French Revolution that is causing the political climate in the West at this time. And it has the same goals, just kill as many people as it can.
Yes. Well, and to wit, if anyone doubts us, leftists that are listening for some reason, if anyone doubts us, all you have to do is a case in point. Imagine if Joe Biden, they had done an assassination attempt 3 different times on Joe Biden. Imagine the media furor that would be going on. But it's not,
Well,
with Trump.
I don't think they have the capacity to imagine things the other way around because they don't see the egregore that is leftism doesn't see people it does not control as people. It sees them as um, extensions of other hostile egregores that it wants to destroy. So I don't. I would argue that very few leftists actually could do that. Could imagine if it was the other way around. At least in my
Yeah,
experience, I don't think they can do it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I would
this
agree
this
with
has
that.
turned this has turned into a much more aggressive discussion than I thought it was going to, but I'm on a roll right now.
Is this
Um,
aggressive? This is just another Monday for me, kind of a thing. Well, Tuesday, I guess it
good
is.
for you. Um, let's see. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you is sort of in the political intersection of the Amelia situation in the United Kingdom and Ireland, especially. I'm curious about your opinions on Ireland, and I'm curious what you think that the continued oil shocks are likely to do to the social and political nature of the United States.
Uh, well, I think it's a matter of you reap what you sow, largely. And this is why I think it's a warning for the United States, and hopefully those who are in power or in the position of doing something about it will do something about it. And it looks like there's impetus to do so, which is good. But I really do think it's a matter of you reap what you sow, because, well, not to insult everybody in the UK, that is certainly not my intent. But as an American, I am unabashedly proud of my heritage and proud of being an American. And my husband, well, probably has said more than once, the reason why all of this is happening in the UK and Ireland is because they exported all of their vim and vigor people back in the 1700s. And everybody that
Yes,
got left behind is
I agree with
basically,
that.
yeah. So
Is that
it's going to happen.
The United States is made up of the population of Europe that was too Faustian to be in Europe.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's where I think that, like, all of these kind of again, not to be insulting, but wet blanket types that were just, oh, you don't question the government, and they just allow it to happen. They allowed themselves to be railroaded, and it was far too little too late by the time, I think it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago that you started seeing any kind of significant pushback. Not even significant. It was significant in the fact that it made any kind of, it didn't make news, but it was getting around on the internet. So in that terms, significant. Pushback against this um, acceptance of this mass migration movement. And before that, it was all kind of like, oh, isn't this so nice? We're all getting along. We're all getting along. We're being so generous and charitable by inviting all these people in, and we're giving of ourselves. A very like the whole socialist mentality, and there's a lot of guilt in there too. I'm sure they were guilt tripped by everybody that they allowed to be in power. And so, but then once you put these people in power, there's no coming back from it. And so now here they are, they're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And I'm like, the only way that this is going to get fixed is through some kind of major crisis. They can't. That's my worry with Europe. I almost think the UK, I hate to say it, but I almost think the UK is lost. Ireland
I
is
kind of agree
lost.
with you. I don't know about
Germany is
Ireland.
lost.
I
Right.
don't know about Ireland because have you been following the Irish riots these last couple of weeks?
Uh, I have, but the thing is, uh,
There've been two car bombs
Irish.
set off.
The Irish are interesting. You know, I'm a quarter Irish. It's my favorite
Mhm.
part of me. I always say, but the Irish are interesting. So my Irish side, they're very much they're long suffering in the sense that if they come up against trial, they'll just accept it. And go home and write a song about it and drink a pint of beer and make a
I don't
story up
I
about it.
don't know. They've been fighting foreigners
Um,
invading their homeland from
yes,
foreign powers forever. And I feel like I mean, so this latest car bomb that blew up what 2 days ago outside a police station in Ireland appears to be a full reactivation of the IRA.
that I can see. That I can see. You push them too far, and now because I think with the Irish, it's always been when they have nothing left to lose, then
Yeah.
then then they'll throw down. But they're very long suffering outside of that. You know, they'll accept a lot and they'll take a lot, and even though they're and you're right, they have been dealing with trying to get people out of Ireland for the longest time, but I feel like that they finally kind of begrudgingly accepted the fact that things weren't going to change after. I think it was like the 80s. The IRA was really big in the 80s, and then not so much recently in the past 20 years. So yeah, I
I mean,
hope I
that's
hope
true.
I hope there's pushback.
But
But I
but also in the last like 3 months, it's popped
yeah.
back up. There have been two car bombs that have blown up in Ireland. There's mass. They're blocking off the oil ports into the countries. The farmers are refusing to let oil into the country of Ireland to screw with the powers that be. I think that Ireland is sort of approaching the point at which they really are going to throw down, and it would make sense for them to be the first in Europe to say no. We're not going to sacrifice our entire civilization on the altar of multiculturalism.
hmm Oh, what a great phrase. It's exactly right. And I don't know like what's going to be the flashpoint. I do think there is going to be one. I don't know what the flashpoint is. I think it's fairly obvious that the government's going to come down on the side of the for all intents and purposes, the de facto caliphate. Um, the new European caliphate, I guess you'd call it. I mean, they make no bone. They very clearly just come right out and say, like basically we are in control and there's nothing you can do about it, especially considering they have people in positions of government now. So,
Mhm.
um,
Oh, that's why you should read Camp of the Saints. That's what it's about.
yeah. I also discovered recently that Bellick wrote a book about the migration invasion of England. That
Alec,
was yes,
what's
Bellick
the name of
did.
the book?
Oh, what was the name of it? I just bought it too. Let me see. It was because I'd never heard of it before. I didn't even like Bellick wrote a fiction. I didn't realize Bellick wrote fiction. So
Mhm.
yeah, but because
Also, I
I had
don't know
mentioned
who
it on my what's that?
also I don't know who Bellick is.
Hillary Bellick, or maybe it was Chesterton. It was one of the two. I always get them mixed up, which is terrible. And somebody's just going to be shaking their head that I just said I get them mixed up. I can guarantee you. Um, let's see.
Could have
It
been Chesterton.
was The Flying Inn, and it's about these
It was
two
Chesterton. Yeah.
Chesterton. Yeah. In future England dominated by progressive Islam, two men travel the country with a barrel of rum, exploiting legal loopholes to evade alcoholic prohibition laws.
Oh, neat. It's a 1914 political fantasy.
But very much like not Chestertonian, if I can use that phrase. I
All
mean,
right,
I'm sure
I'll
it's
add it
like
to my list.
his style, but he was very much a philosopher, kind of a sociological or
Mhm.
sociology. He was very much commenter on the ways of man at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it because it's. I was like, oh, because apparently he did write about it because I think I had made a comment somewhere that
Wow.
he hadn't written about it, and they were like,
Where
actually,
the
he
temperance
did.
movement has allowed a bizarre form of progressive Islam to dominate political and social life. Wow. All right, we're adding that to the list. I haven't heard of this book. I'll read it after Camp of the Saints. Fascinating. And it was written over 100 years ago.
Yep.
Wild. I guess some people could see it's coming. I mean, one could argue there's a number of very brilliant minds that could see coming where the West was going to go. Although seeing it before World War One is very impressive. Um,
Yes.
like Spangler, Chesterton, a couple of others saw it before World War One. Kaczynski saw it back in the 70s, where we were going with high technology. Who's another excellent philosopher I would recommend reading.
I bought his book about, what was it, 3 years ago. Whenever he
Mhm.
came out with a new one, he came out with, it's called Technological Slavery. And I bought his book, like, I think I must have gotten it maybe a month after it came out. And because I had read about his life, and I'm like, well, I mean, he's not wrong, right? I mean, he was wrong in
Uh-huh.
what he did, but he's not wrong in like his assessment.
Oh
And
no, he's not wrong.
right. So when I was reading it and I read it, and then I'm going to myself, man, like, if this how is it possible that this guy who sees all this stuff, who sees everything that he thought and worried about was going to happen, and his total failure, right? He took human lives in the hopes, the crazy hopes that this would stop this machine somehow from
Actually, so
progressing.
he took human lives just to get his book out there, in my opinion, to get his writing out into the public where people could see it, which was successful in
Right,
doing
but
that.
in hopes that it would have some kind of positive effect to prevent it from happening, and it didn't. And I thought to myself, I'm shocked that he hasn't offed himself yet. And lo
Oh,
and
he's dead
behold,
now.
a few months later, that's exactly what he did.
I
So
thought he
I
just died of old age.
no, no, he committed suicide. Yeah,
Really?
I believe so.
Let me look it up. Died. Oh,
Yeah,
yep, you're right. He died by
yeah.
suicide, June 10th,
Yes,
2023.
because of the hopelessness of the situation, because I'm like, he was worried about subdivisions in his backyard, and you know, and then now we have, look at what we have, AI. And I hate to say, like, like, to me, the whole Elon Trump thing where he's embracing the whole AI chip in the head thing because it's coming whether you like it or not, so might as well just do what you can. Like, that's nuts to me. So I mean, like, I would think in his case, Kaczynski's case, like, he would just see it as like, it's futile. It's
Well,
over.
yeah,
It's
well,
done.
he'd see that as it's over. There's
Yeah.
no there's no fix for it now once we've developed AI systems, and that's probably
Yep.
partially the reason. The other reason is because he had late stage cancer and he was going to die soon anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I'd imagine not wanting to suffer through the prison trying to keep you alive for another 3 years. Um,
Yeah.
he was also 81. But yeah, no, he could see that coming. Not sure where we are going with AI. I do see a path to intellectual liberty despite AI, where we can use AI as one of our tools. We're closer to the summit now, is how I'd put it. We're closer to the summit, and there's new options that have opened up. And I can see a path to a positive future. One of the side effects, though, is going to be the population going to have to drop. And the population is dropping, mostly because people are just choosing not to have kids. And then the other thing that's going to happen is we're going to have to completely restructure our relationship with high technology in comparison to the post-industrial era of the 20th century. We're going to have to develop a relationship with technology that's much less um, direct tooling and much more mutual agreement between the two of us and the technology we're using. Um, there's a company right now. So the best way I can put it is I can see a way to do it where instead of having technology that absorbs our attention, we can have technology that augments our capabilities. And that's not to say, I mean, getting a chip in your brain. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. But I also think that I could see a future where instead of having a cell phone and instead of having social media, the internet will be so inundated by these digital systems that you will have a personal AI assistant to which you can just ask questions. Now, whether or not you use it and how you use it will determine whether you are an independent human or a drone controlled by your AI assistant and puppeted around. But I do think there's a way in that direction. But to do that, we have to localize very heavily our industry, energy, and move away from the mass surveillance, mass corporatocracy system, and social credit system that we're building.
Mm. I think the only problem with that is I don't know if you can do that in an organic way. I think it would require the exact same sort of dystopian controls to be able to, you know what I mean? Like it's like you can't put like once the cat's out of the bag, you can't, you know.
Well, all right. So
But
there's a company called Leap 71. Have you ever heard of it? Most people have.
no.
Even most engineers haven't. So Leap 71 has recently come out of the woodwork. It's a company based out of Dubai, created by two software engineers, um, two general engineers, and they are now on contract with a number of major rocketry companies because they built an AI system, combined it with CAD modeling software and a sort of dynamic analysis system for different types of fluid dynamics and pressure loading. And what they can do effectively, it's more complex than this, but in brief strokes, this is what they can do with it, is they can say, I'm building something out of aluminum. I want it to be able to produce this much thrust, and I want it to be this type of rocket engine. Make me something. And then it will produce a rocket engine. You can 3D print it, and it works, which is crazy. They can go over the course of about 6 to 8 weeks from initial design documents to a final product ready for testing, final prototype ready for testing. And so now they're being signed with major European space companies for putting satellites up as building the rocket engines for it. And if this system is sufficiently broadly expanded, which will take some time, but is doable, you will be able to say, make me the parts to put together an engine for a motorcycle, and it will make you custom parts for an engine for a motorcycle. Then you plug that into your metal 3D printer and you can start printing out complex devices in pieces that you can then bolt together.
This
And
is fun. I find this like so it's fascinating for me being a science fiction writer. Like so part of what I like about science fiction is that you can say, oh, we're gonna fed this into the fabricator and he's got to create this part. You know what I mean?
yes,
And
yes,
we just lost a part. Okay, great, let's just replace it. Right?
we'll fabricate a new one. Yeah.
And then you get the hard science fiction people that are like, that can't happen because, your world can't exist because it hinges upon this thing and that's not physically possible, And it's like, well, look at that. Magic explained.
Well,
Because who would have thought that we would be there?
true. It still takes 2 weeks to print the part because it's metal printing and takes a long time, but it's very impressive tech. And right now they're expanding it to include jet engines as well as rocket engines, and they're doing some other clever things. But what's really interesting about this is how organic the stuff looks. I'll put a note in to talk about this and to provide a link. But the stuff that it prints out looks extraordinarily organic. Let me show you something if you can look at your phone real quick because I know you're recording on this phone. But this is their website, and if you scroll down, I'm posting it here in the chat. If you scroll down on their website and look at some of the stuff their AI system has produced, it looks very organic. It does not look like a human built this. It looks like it could have been grown. It's fascinating.
Hmm, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll put some pictures down below so that people who are listening along can see. But you end up with these structures, and you're like, "Why does that work?" And the computer's like, "I don't know. It just does. Here, build it, print it out.
Hmm.
It'll work." Um, and so I do see the possibility for that sort of Star Trek future where you can run a starship with 10 engineers and a supercomputer because the computer can fabricate parts, can produce designs and fabricate parts for something that you need when you need it rather than
Oh
needing an
my goodness.
entire team
This
of 10,000 people.
this is the route of HAL 9000 though. You know.
It could be, and it really depends on one, how intelligent AI gets, and two, how how good we are at understanding our own AI systems and interacting with them. I expect that we're going to develop a relationship with AI similar to the way we developed a relationship with social media. There's going to be some influencers, but it will be much less common of an occupation in like 20 years. It'll be more. Everybody will still have their channel, but fewer people will be able to make a living off of it. Um,
Well, on a more practical note,
mm,
I was recently, because my son is going into high school, so he's going into high school, and you're trying to figure out all the ducks in order for him to have trajectory where he's going materially, what he's career
yeah.
wise, career track, all that kind of a thing. And I'm looking at the engineering, and one of the things that I looked up was how AI proof the engineering field is, and they're like, oh, largely AI proof because they don't have AI systems that can produce these sorts of things. They still have to
Well,
have
no,
humans to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, not
last
anymore. And that was my question, was how soon are they going to get an AI that can do CAD programs? Because
they have one now.
that seems like the stupid obvious thing to do.
I mean, this is the one that they have. There is an
Yep,
AI that does CAD programs.
yep,
With that said, you still need an engineer to put it together and understand the parts.
yep.
So, mechanical engineering, I would say, is somewhat at risk now. But something like material science, geology, mining, or mining is going to be a big one. High recommendation. Um, Petroleum engineering, that kind of thing. You're going to need people in that for a long time. Mechanical engineering, though, where here's the part, make me the part, is going to be something that's going to be a lot easier for people to run with by the time he's probably out of high school.
Hmm.
So there's different forms of engineering, and I suspect mechanical engineering is one of the first ones that could be weak to
I
AI
think
if this sort of
all
CAD system continues developing.
architectural as well. Architectural engineering is going to be, I think, going to go fairly quickly as well. Because it's the
Um,
same, I think it's the same sort of a thing where they're trying to, as long as you have all of the necessary dynamics, right? It's all just numbers. So if you can plug all
True,
those numbers in, you have a
but there,
system.
you're gonna still need gonna need somebody with a PE license, a physical engineering license, to sign off on it
Correct.
before it goes live. Whereas something like mechanical engineering, you go through a whole bunch of iterative testing, which means that when you shove an AI into it, it'll start doing just radically different things.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Man, this is so wild. Some of the stuff they've built, you look at it and you're like, how? Why? And they're like, I don't know, but it works. That's what the computer said. Um, so yeah, I would be engineering's one of the best ones is the place to say it. And I would say geology and mining, it's gonna be a long time before they're replacing mining and mining, especially because you can't get access to digital systems when you're underground. There's no satellite feed. I
Uh,
mean, it's there, but you need to kind of know what you're doing, independent of an AI walking you through it. Um, yeah, it really depends on which trajectory AI takes at this point, and it seems to be occupying things that require large data analytics. So things like protein engineering, biotech, those are going to be AI heavy because it requires mass data analytics to understand how these systems work. Precision aerospace engineering is also going to be AI heavy, but you're also going to need precision aerospace engineers to work with the AI to make stuff happen. I think by the time the sort of generation alpha really comes into their own, there's already going to be a radical demographic decline. What is it? There's 70 million Zoomers and 45 million generation alpha. Um, and I think that demographic decline is going to make it a lot easier to find work for the next generation once the millennials and Generation X start retiring.
hmm There's hope for them yet, I hear.
That's what they
Well,
say. Uh, yeah, it's been a wild ride since 2014, huh?
mm,
Let's see. Bringing up other questions that I wanted to ask you about. I'm curious about your theological, along with philosophical and social opinions about the side effects of the attempts to integrate universal surveillance into everything we own. Like there was an article that came out recently where Ford uh, submitted for patents that would allow them to run biometric data on the driver in terms of their heartbeat, pupil dilation, and run their face through police facial recognition databases before it will even turn on your car.
Well, that's just nuts. I could see there being a lot of pushback. Although if it ends up being like a states' rights issue, I mean, I know
Well,
it's probably going to become standard in other countries, but I think in the United States, Florida would Florida,
yeah,
Florida
I'd
would say,
imagine
I know where you
states
could
will
send
push
that.
back. Yeah.
You know,
Um, what is it? I heard that the most supercars in the United States are registered to the state of Montana.
really,
Montana
I
doesn't
wouldn't.
do emissions testing.
Huh. Oh, supercars. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was shocked that Florida doesn't because, and I used to live in Texas, and Texas had you had to get your car inspected before you could drive it. And if they
Uh,
caught you with a car that wasn't inspected, it was a huge ticket. So I was shocked that Florida didn't have something like that. It's a
yeah,
fairly environmentalist friendly state.
yeah. Apparently, the state of Montana, according to this, has the highest number of registered supercars in the United States because there's a 0% sales tax and no emissions testing or vehicle inspections.
Hmm. And yeah, you would think that like Montana is like super conservative because of stuff like that, but they're really not. It's interesting.
I think they're super libertarian. So
Mm,
they're very conservative when the country's liberal, and they're very liberal when the country's conservative.
right. Well, I mean, I think as far as like how the surveillance state, especially, I mean, you're talking about like China right now has a surveillance state where they've got cameras
Everywhere.
all over the place, right, everywhere, and
Every 500 meters on the highway.
and everybody who lives when they're asked about it, obviously, if they're on state television, they better be saying the right things. So of
Yep.
course they say things like, "Oh yes, it makes me feel very safe," you
Mhm.
know. Um, I don't really understand how cameras make a person feel safe because it just means that there's always someone watching, which is I find personally
Well,
very
this is the
creepy.
great part is now it doesn't have to be a person watching. You can just have an AI watch everybody as if somebody was watching that person specifically. It's great. Mass data. You don't even
Well,
need to hire
again,
the people to do the watching anymore.
right, it's funny in Florida, we actually, and I don't know if you know this, but you might want to check out your state. There are camera systems already put in place
Oh,
through the policing. They don't have to
yeah,
go through and
the
get it
flock system.
approved.
The
What's
flock
that?
system. Are you talking
Yeah,
about the flock system?
yeah, yeah. And it didn't have to. It wasn't approved by the local county commission. It wasn't approved by the state level. It wasn't approved obviously, well, there's state, there's county, and then there was just no approvals whatsoever that went through. It didn't. Nobody voted this in, and so
But
it was
wait,
just the
so it's not
approval.
state property either. Is it city
It was
property?
it was put in through the local the sheriff. Um, the local sheriff was the one who put it in until he got such pushback on it
Yeah.
that they said no, that they said you have to take it down because it's they were so furious about it, uh, because it's the whole thing with the surveillance. And there's a thing going on right now where it was, I think, as of 5 years ago at least, it was already being rolled out and being tested in Africa, of this predictive policing. Now, you remember the movie Minority Report? Do
Yep,
you remember
yep.
that?
I've heard of the
Right.
predictive
So
policing system.
right, so that's based off of some ridiculous future brainiac psychic thing, whatever, right? But now we have AI, which is fairly the same thing, we'll just say.
Have you ever
Um,
seen have you ever seen the comic that says tech company announces that they finally created the torment matrix from the famous science fiction novel Don't Create the Torment Matrix?
no, but yes, exactly, exactly. And it's so nuts to me because it's like, this is they're literally rolling this out with this predictive policing, and the whole point is they do it a soft rollout right in Africa, and then they start
Mhm.
rolling it out in other places, with the point being to predetermine your guilt or innocence, your likelihood of going radical or
Yeah.
committing a crime based off of certain factors. It's like a roll of the dice. Where are you? What is the likelihood?
Mhm.
So and then they're going to treat with you based on how likely or not likely you are. So I mean, but at the same token, right, being a conservative and being somebody of sound mind, stereotypes are not always without justification, or they're not always, unjustified.
All
A
right,
lot
so
of
I have
times
a
stereotypes.
proposal actually for keeping
But
everyone safe. I have a proposal for keeping everyone safe, while at the same time not needing universal surveillance. I've heard of this thing called a gun, and if everybody
too
just has
complicated,
one,
man. Too complicated.
that's not.
Yes.
There we go. Let's try that. Oh, I'm so frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I was. The gun does seem and the automatically you have the accusations of the conservatives want the Wild West,
I would
which I
prefer
think is.
that. I would radically prefer that to what we have, to
Yes.
universal surveillance state.
Right. Yes. Well, I think the states, if the states are going to have to push back on it, and my fear with what's going on, the climate of what's going on, the political climate, is that we end up, because the rank and file person, they vote by their pocketbook, they vote by their wallet and their gas tank. What is the cost of groceries? What is my mortgage payment? Can I feed my kids?
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, that's really what they care about. So if they're seeing their things aren't going well in that arena for whatever reason they want to chalk it up to, then it causes a pendulum swing the other direction. And my fear is that if that happens, it's like these pendulum swings politically, they're getting worse, you know? So it's going way to the right, way to the left, further and further. And
I mean,
I'm not in favor of moderate.
we haven't gone very far to the right yet. We're gonna have to see how far to the right it gets because I have not seen a whole lot of actual push to the right.
Well, I think most people, because people on the right, conservatives, are, as much as possible, we turn the other cheek. We tolerate evil. Because we have something to lose. So many people on the left don't have anything to lose. We have something to lose. We have
Yeah.
family. We have kids. We are building legacy.
Well, I
So
mean,
we
like
want to keep the peace and order as much as possible.
the most conservative thing that we've done politically, though, is we've made abortion back to a states' rights issue. Like
Yep.
that's the conservative thing that we did. There's our big victory. Is abortion is once again a states' rights issue, and that's not like a big move. That is not a hard push to the right. And I suspect when young men, especially in the Zoomer generation, and just even when millennials get their hands on the reins of power, young angry conservative men will be much less um, let's much less of a let's make it a states' rights issue and more of a why are 18-year-olds allowed to vote again? Let's rescind that. So
Yeah,
I could see them
I don't
going after
know.
the amendments.
I don't know what will end up happening as far as like a pendulum swing, but the more it pendulum swings, the more, like I said, because the left has nothing to lose, the more they're willing to double down and just go even further down the road of crazy.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, you know what I mean? Like the right, for as crazy as they get, they're gonna hit a level of max crazy. And unfortunately, and this is where I think all of our society is inundated with this to some degree or another, the modernism and the leftism and the liberalism. Even people who are you get these there's a whole contingent now of people that were moderate left, that the left has gone so far left that now they're actually right, even though they never saw themselves as right before. But now they're right. But it doesn't. It's just a matter of rhetoric, right? Because the people that are to the right of them, that still don't believe like homosexuality is acceptable, they're they're still going like, well, you haven't changed positions. So it's not like, even though they call themselves, on the right or Republican or whatever it is, they're still accepting of these sins and this kind of behavior in society.
Mhm.
So I don't think that it's going to be
Well,
able to have any
so here,
acceptance of this far of the right.
so here's a position that I kind of maintain, which is that I think the United States is almost Romanizing right now with all of the good and all of the bad that entails, and that we're sort of in the process of transitioning from a republic to an empire with the continued centralization of the executive branch. And at some point in our lifetime, we're likely to see a executive leader of the United States, a presidential figure or a general maybe, but probably a president, um, attain sufficient centralization of power as to render Congress functionally irrelevant. And at that point, we will have officially exited the late Republic stage and entered the early Empire stage. And then the country will probably poke around for another couple hundred years, but that really depends on whether or not AI and similar high technologies are functional wild cards or not. because they
Mm.
could be wild cards that change the direction of our civilization.
Well, it's also interesting if you're looking at comparing it to like the Roman Empire, like how Rome fell with the whole the inundation of foreign nationals, more or
Mhm.
less, and the barbarism. But I think that's where you'd have to argue that's a little bit different because I mean they have happily gotten rid of to every degree that they can the the civilization. So I don't know. I think it's like a short. I don't know. You see, like you're saying, like we'll kick around for another few hundred years or whatever it is. I don't know. I think it might be a much shorter turnaround time as far as like the fall of the empire, so to speak,
Well, I don't
just
know
because we're
how the
already
United
inundated.
States could fall at this point. Um, it could definitely become more centralized and dictatorial, and quality of life could continue going down. But I don't see a path to the United States functionally breaking up.
Not now. Not yet. No. No. I honestly think it'll end up being a numbers game because the only people having the children are the fundamentalists,
Mhm.
Christians, and the Muslims.
Well, even the Muslim and the Hispanic imports into the United States don't tend to have a high birth rate after they've been here for a while.
That's
Um,
interesting.
Yeah, so the next generation, usually the birth rate drops after the second generation for the time being.
Hmm.
The other thing that's interesting is that uh, the Amish are going to be a statistically significant percentage of the population in the next generation, up to like, there are what, 400,000 of them now, and it's going to increase by at least a factor of 3 to 1.2 or 1.4 million in the next generation, which will make Pennsylvania plurality Amish. And then the generation after that, imagine again, four kids. So now you're looking at over 1% of the entire US population is going to be Amish in the next two generations. And after
Very
after
interesting.
after 1 or 2%, it quickly blows up to 50% if you're not careful.
I
So
I
you have
wonder if they've done those same kinds of numbers with traditional Catholics because they're having significantly more children than four. Like I'm
some of
not
them, yeah.
by I have 10 children. I'm not by any means an anomaly for traditional Catholics.
Yeah. Which
You
is
know?
incredibly based, by the way. Good for you.
Well, that's
Um,
not why I'm doing it.
but it is extremely based.
Uh,
Um, let's see. Also, Mennonites, they're going to be a significant percentage of the population. I believe that Mennonites represented, I think, Bolivia's Mennonite population is 150,000 people, which I find interesting. You get um, these New World colonies of these weird religions that have come to the New World. And Mennonites in Bolivia, I think made up 2% of all births in the entire country a couple years ago.
I, I think this is indicative of the general pendulum swing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you end up with so much crazy, there's going to be pushback on it. There's going to be. I think the whole Amelia phenomenon is really just another
Mhm.
wrinkle in the pushback.
Yeah. So in 2024, 2% of all newborn children in Bolivia were German Mennonites,
Hmm.
up from 0.2% in 1980.
Wow.
And in the United States, it's going to be the Amish, the Mennonites, the Mormons, and I think there's one other sort of weird religious, semi-independent religious group that's going to make up a significant percentage. Um, and I do think that we're in a weird spot right now because classical liberalism is dying and progressive liberalism is going to die because it can't last more than a single generation or two because they kill their own kids. What I suspect is going to happen is we are going to end up in a country that is, after a couple of generations, it'll be a while, but give it some time, because right now all of the older modes of being are weeding themselves out. Liberals do not have kids; they try to have your kids, but they're not going to be able to overrule a population that's 4 million Amish people in Pennsylvania, or I mean, the Amish people flipped the vote in Pennsylvania for Trump. Trump won by 150,000 votes, and 400,000 Amish people signed up to vote when he ran for office. So the Amish are becoming a very significant minority in Pennsylvania, and the Mormons still rule Utah, and they still have a birth rate that's above replacement, but only barely. Um, Mennonites are almost as high as the Amish. So I think that we're going to go through a radical population contraction, followed by a period of stabilization where the uh, extremely religious fundamentalist groups are going to be gaining percentage population for a generation or two. And then we will end up in a position where the country is once again demographically growing while the rest of the world has difficulty growing demographically. And it's because the wacky fundamentalist groups that came to the New World are fundamentally divorced, are metaphysically divorced from the traditional religious groups that are overseeing the fall of the old world right now.
Well, I think it's my big fear with the state of the country and where it's going, because I do see that happening, is that during this time of contraction, that other countries will perceive it as a sufficient vulnerability for them to take advantage of the moment, so to speak, and
I
move
believe
in.
that's true, and they'll have a much easier time with Europe than in the United States, which is why Europe is probably going to fall,
Yeah.
reconquista at some point. But Europe is probably going to fall. The United States are going to become ethnically divorced from Europe. White American will consider themselves a separate ethnic group from Europeans, which is probably a good thing. Um, and then I suspect that the United States will sort of reemerge on the other side of this demographic cliff as the one of the few world powers that still has resources, a growing population, and a moral certainty about where it is they're going. And then I can see a reconquista happening of Western Europe. The Russians are going to continue becoming minorities in their own territory. The Chinese are going to go through one of the worst demographic collapses in human history. Although what's very interesting, did you see this? In 2024 and 2025, South Korea's birth rate has started to rise again. Their fertility rate has.
No, that's interesting.
It's very interesting. I just found out about this today because I was looking at the stats because I was curious. But the South Korean fertility rate, the lowest in the world, it went all the way down to 0.7, apocalyptic back in 2023. Um, but it's back up to one. Now, this could be people that were having kids um, that were not having kids during COVID, that are all having kids at once. The other thing that this could be is let me see if I can find it. I know I have a reference to it somewhere. It could be the population pyramid because what we're seeing now is an echo of the boomer generation in South Korea. And so there's a demographic, a very large demographic that is now aged into their early 30s. And so they could be the ones having the kids in South Korea, and that might go away. But I do find it very interesting that the fertility rate has climbed back up to one. I've never seen that happen, or very rarely have we ever seen that happen in the country where the fertility rate of an entire demographic cohort goes up. That's not something we've seen in a long time.
Well, the fertility rate in the United States is deplorable, isn't it? Among like
It's
from
1.6.
what I heard, like the younger, like the Zoomer generation is like not having children at all, almost. Like if you divide it
Um,
up like a cohort by
yes.
generation.
Um, yeah, according by generation, the Zoomer generation is not having children hardly at all. Let me look that up. Zoomer fertility rate. Now they're not into their 30s yet, but the Zoomer fertility rate appears to be below one, somewhere below one.
Hmm.
So yeah, low, real low, apocalyptically low. And then Generation Alpha, there's about half as many Gen Alpha as there are Zoomers, whereas there's about the same number of Zoomers as there are millennials. But with that said, it does appear that for at least a bit here and there, the fertility rate can go up, and it could be going up as a consequence of all of the family bloodlines that do not have kids finally wiping themselves out. So you get an apocalyptic looking fertility rate and a radical demographic decline, as we've seen in South Korea. Oh, hold on. And after that, you get a rise in fertility.
Yeah, I wanted to be sure to be a little bit of time to be able to touch on my books because I don't want to
Oh yeah,
be,
yeah. Touch
you
on
know
your
what I mean?
books
It's
before we finish. We've got about 15 more minutes. Let's do that.
all right. Thank you.
Yo, how many books have you written?
I have well, of the ones that are published by I published under this pen name. It's somewhere in the 9, 8,
Wow,
7.
that's a
There's anthology, so there's anthologies in there, so those aren't exclusively just mine. I have a science fiction space opera series.
cool.
And then I have a historical Regency vampire detective series, which if you've ever tried to
Nice.
market a cross genre book, it's very difficult. But I just really I wanted to. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to write this story because it is very hard to market a cross genre. Um, and then I have a dystopian neo dark age novel. Um, so it's kind of a bit of a spread, but
Mhm.
I've been writing since 2009, and I think I'm fairly good at it. I enjoy doing it. Everything's written from a conservative worldview. It's unapologetically conservative, and but it's
Nice.
I don't like preachy fiction.
Mhm.
So it's not like I've read some preachy fiction before where it's they kind of it's like religion for the sake of religion. Like they're gonna
Yeah.
rub religion in your face for the sake. So it's typically for me it's very organic. The instances where religion
Have
gets
you
brought up are
have you
very
ever read the
typical for what happens in real life.
have
What's
you
that?
ever read the book Ride Sally Ride?
No.
Okay. That's one that I would recommend. It's sort of preachy, but because it's a central plot point, it isn't exactly a problem in the book. Like questions about faith are sort of the central theme of the book, faith in the face of progressivism.
Mm.
Let me see who wrote that. I would recommend adding that to the note in. Um, let's see, that was written by Douglas Wilson, the I believe he's a preacher. So I would recommend that. Anyway, back to your book. So you've got a widespread then. You've got um, science fiction, sort of urban fantasy genre with a detective story. Um, what what sort of is your impetus for writing such a wide variety of different types of books?
I guess I think I have like that whole ADHD. So I have to pull out from like one or the other. Like I'll get into it and then I get bored of it. It's like having pizza every day or something like that. Like I'm just like,
Mhm,
ugh, I can't do it anymore right now with this one, and then I gotta pivot and go to a different one. So I
mhm,
have multiple books on the burner at any given point in time.
mhm,
Except for like now because it's too crazy right now. Um but yeah, so when I was but it's interesting though because the headspace is completely different when you're talking about switching from one book to a different. You're talking about switching from one character to another. So if
mhm,
you're all in the headspace of one character and then you're switching to a different one, you can't just flip back and forth. So I can stay sustained on one for a significant amount of time, but then I have to
mhm,
I get to the point where I have to switch it. So um, my thing is just to write breakneck speed. There was a book. What was it? 2 to 10,000 or I think it was 2 to 10,000 was the name of the book, and it was about just getting the words out. And so many
yeah.
writers get stuck on they can't get the word count in because they're trying to get like the perfect thing, and it's like no, just get it out and get it out as quickly as possible. And for me, it really helps to have like a map of where I'm going for that particular scene. So
Mhm.
having a 5,000 word day is not unusual for me.
Oh,
So and that really helps to
that's pretty cool. I
yeah.
I write a fair bit. I'm trying to work on it, finish a novel right now, but I don't do many days, but when I do, I tend to do high word count days because I will just get too deep into the weeds and want to get something out. So I think you're more effective. You've already got a massive bibliography, and that's not to include whatever you've written under any other pen names. So
Right.
cool.
Well, I mean, it helps, I will say, if I can give you some writing advice as a writer, and it really helped me, is even if you can't commit, a 3 hour block of time to writing or whatever it is, just
Mhm,
commit the time to do one line.
mhm,
And then it's like, because then you're a writer. Like, if you're not a writer, if you don't write every day, that's what they say. You're not a writer if you don't write every day. So at least write one line, just one line with your story. And maybe you end up discovering you have 15 minutes to write a little more after all, or whatever it is.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So that one line helps too, because then you're revisiting your story and it doesn't just slip away over the space of 3 months or whatever it is. Um, yeah. So, but it's been really like I really love the stories that I've written, and I go back and I read them regularly, and I'm like, wow, I really like this. I mainly wrote it for me, for my own enjoyment. So when I go back and read it, I'm like, I forget. I leave enough time to forget the story, kind of, and then I'll go back and read it. I'm like, yeah, I really like this. Like if I didn't write it and I didn't own it, I would totally buy this book. You know.
Yeah, that's the similar perspective I've had when I go back to the beginning of some of the stuff I've worked on. I'm like, I actually really am enjoying this. I
And you're
remember,
not Are you published yet?
um, not under my current pen name, I'm not. With my previous work having mostly been various anthologies, although there's a short story that I've got in the works that I plan on doing a radio show for with art on my YouTube channel and on my Substack.
Oh, you should get your novel out there.
I'm working on it. I'm only
I
up to
mean,
like
if you write
80,000
well enough,
words. I'm
yeah,
close.
if you write well enough to go back and read what you write and enjoy it, you definitely write well enough to get a novel published. You should work on it. You should get it done. That's awesome.
I'm getting there. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just need to be yelled at to get around to it. I've got
Consider
too
this
much
a
going
yelling.
on.
That's what Clayton does. Clayton is our not to put it bluntly, he's our ass kicker of the group. He's the guy that's like, get your shit published, let's go. You know?
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
yeah. Yeah.
I
Not that he
definitely
needed
need
to
that.
encourage me because I was already well in the weeds by the time that, I
Mhm.
met up with him. But yes. Uh
Good for
definitely.
you. Out of curiosity, question about your other pen name. I'm not going to ask what you've written under it because no doxing anybody, obviously. But um, is it good or is it novel content or is it gooner content?
What does that mean? What's Gooner?
The weird female romance books
What
because they
is
sell
which what
well.
what's the weird ones?
You haven't heard of any of the weird ones?
Well, I don't know about weird.
I mean, have you
No.
heard of Morning Glory Milking Farm?
Oh, you mean like the what do they call those romanticy bodice rippers?
Yeah, I
No,
would I would
they
refer
aren't
them
romantic.
to.
It's funny because the whole 1980 bodice ripper thing,
Uh-huh.
it created. We were talking about like the whole pendulum thing. There's a pendulum
Hmm.
in fiction too,
Hmm.
where there's an entire massive, massive market, and it's an indie market because there's very few of the publishing markets that want to cater to it, but it's an indie market of clean romance writers, and
Oh,
they only
interesting.
write clean romance, and it's perfectly tame. It's like watching one of those what is that, the Hallmark Channel, you know? Now they're not as like the Hallmark Channel is notoriously like mushy, I guess you'd say. They're not
Hmm.
mushy a lot of times. It's just good fiction. And there's like clean science
Uh-huh.
romanticy, clean
Oh, cool.
science fiction romance. There's a whole like the genre of the clean romance is massive. And it caters to readers of clean romance who, and it's funny because we get quote unquote converts, where they people who are romance readers, they ingest romance by like, if they like you, they will buy all 30 of your books within like 3 months. Like they're called
Mhm.
whales. They're whale readers, and that's great and all. But when you're talking about these people that they get,
Also
it's like a
metaphorically. I'm sorry, I'm just talking.
it
Go
is.
ahead.
It's fictional pornography, right? And they
Yeah.
get hooked on it just like the way men can get hooked on, visual pornography. They get hooked on it. But then there's like a certain amount of the sordid, it's sordid and it pales. And eventually it erodes. It's a disgust. It becomes
Mhm.
gross, right? And they realize this over time, so they end up quoting having a conversion moment where they realize this isn't real, it's all crap. It's terrible. It's not even good writing. Why am I reading this? And so they go
Mhm.
start searching for something else, and that's when they discover the whole clean romance indie fiction set. And so my other pen name, I write in the clean romance side of
Okay.
things. And because I mean, it's the way romance used to be written back in the day. It didn't used to have all this junk and nonsense in there. I mean, I Louis L'Amour would almost be called, like this kind of, it's that kind of genre.
Yeah.
um, yeah, they're just nice books. Um,
I
but they're not science fiction, so I don't, I
okay.
don't, I don't. Yeah.
I quite enjoy science fiction. I feel like science fiction is a more fun genre than fantasy because you have to deal with much more complex constraints to your setting than you do in fantasy.
I think it depends upon whether or not you put constraints in your fantasy. I feel like a lot of people are locked into the Tolkien type of
That's
fantasy
true.
mode, you know. And so, but I
That's
mean,
true.
there's so many. Fantasy is like it should be ideally like wildly varying. If you have
It
people that
should
are
be.
Yeah,
Well, I
world
feel like
builders.
Brandon Sanderson's done a lot of damage to the fantasy genre
Mhm.
because he's created sort of a paint by numbers method that a whole bunch of authors have tried to use, and it never comes out that well. It never comes out as an independent work. Is a good way to put it.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, I guess I wouldn't know. I try not to. I'm one of those types of people that like if I read, it's just so silly. I have to be careful what I read and when I read it. Because if I'm in the middle of writing a novel and then I'll read something else, like it can end up being derivative. So I have to read something that's completely not in the genre that I'm writing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll be affected by whatever I read. Um, I really like that. I hate it that it happens, but I'm also one of those types of people, like, if you have an accent, I'll start mimicking your accent without realizing I'm mimicking your accent.
Well,
So I like
you go through it in your first edit, and you make sure to stylize it all the same way.
yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't, it's not even, like, stylistically, it's more like it'll be, like, major stuff. So
Oh,
I can't read anything, basically, in my own genre unless I'm not writing in that genre.
it's good to know.
Mhm.
I read so much and so broadly that it's hard for me to just nail down a single book. I've read a lot of books. Audible has been very helpful because I drive a fair bit, and so when I'm driving, I can listen to books.
Have you read here's a science fiction book that I bet you would I imagine that you would enjoy. I enjoyed the heck out of it when I read it. It's called Armor, and it's from back in the 70s, I want to say.
I haven't read it, but it rings a bell.
It's one of my favorite science fiction novels.
John Steakley, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I will add it to my list. I've got a very long list, but I'll put it on there. I'm going to be on a long trip here in a couple more weeks, so it'll be a good book to have. So is there anything else that you would like that you would like to add
Uh,
before we take off? And we'll put a link down below for your books so that people can find them. I'm sure you have a
yeah.
page on Amazon or something.
Absolutely. Indie authors need reviews. That's what helps us drive our sales and helps us to be able to continue producing books. So pick up a copy of Amelia. I also have an entire anthology set put out by Quanta Publishing. That was a lot of the Lemur authors are on there too.
Mhm.
Um, so there's the what is it? It's just the Quanta Publishing science fiction anthology, but you can find all of that on my name on Amazon. This page Zeplendam. I don't really have a. I just sell through Amazon. So, but yep, that's pretty much it.
Well,
Buy
great.
our
Thank you for
books.
coming on.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time. I'm sorry that I have a hard stop at 2 hours, but that's why I usually try to schedule at least 2 hours to talk to somebody because we tend to get into pretty interesting conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
You have a great day.